In my last video entitled The Fates of Unsinkable Ships, I spoke about what happened to several vessels that either directly or indirectly gained the label of unsinkable. 6 out of the 7 such ships sank, so the title of unsinkable seems to be much more of a curse than a blessing. What if I told you, though, that there was a thing in World War II that actually was unsinkable? Something that survived the destruction of 3 separate warships and came out of it all basically unscathed. What kind of thing could pull that off? The answer, as it turns out, is this little furry fellow. Let me introduce you to Unsinkable Sam, the World War II ship's cat that managed to outlast a battleship, a destroyer, and an aircraft carrier, survive the war, and go on to live a full life. For those of you wondering why was a cat on a warship to begin with, let alone 3 of them, it was actually fairly common in the past to have cats aboard naval vessels. Mice getting into the food supply could become an issue on ships, so cats used to be brought on board to serve as both mascots and mousers. It was common enough, in fact, that warships would often have people visually inspect gun barrels before firing, because ship's cats would climb into them to sleep. It was also on the long and sometimes oddly specific list of things that caused bad luck on a seafaring craft to lose a ship's cat. When warships were sunk and the ship's cat could be rescued, they were often claimed by the rescued vessel and became the new ship's ship cat. And since cats generally give zero shits about anything and just claim territory wherever they go, the cats generally accepted their new surroundings without issue. And that last statement is about to become the thread of story holding the tale of Unsinkable Sam together. Sam began his World War II escapades serving aboard the German battleship Bismarck. The Bismarck was, at the time, considered the crown jewel of the Kriegsmarine and one of the most formidable battleships of the era. On May 24th, 1941, the Bismarck was involved in the Battle of Denmark Strait, where she would proceed to sink the HMS Hood, one of the ships sent to intercept the Bismarck's battle group. The Hood was a revered ship amongst the British, and her sinking was a blow to England's morale. The British immediately became fixated on avenging her. The Royal Navy ordered every ship they could muster to do one thing: sink the Bismarck. It so happens that the Hood had struck and damaged Bismarck as well during their exchange, so the latter was not at full speed. The closest safe ports for the battleship were also in France, meaning she had some sailing to do if she wanted to escape the wrath of the English Navy. She actually made it to within 400 miles, or 644 kilometers, of a friendly port in Brest, France, before her time ran out. Torpedo planes from the HMS Ark Royal spotted the Bismarck and struck her with 3 torpedoes, leading to her rudder jamming. Now only able to sail in a circle, the British battleships King George V and Rodney were dispatched and fired the shots that would eventually lead to her sinking. Once the Bismarck finally succumbed, British ships in the area began a rescue effort. A supposed sighting of a German U-boat hindered those efforts, however, and only about 110 of the Bismarck's approximately 2,200 crew were saved. Among the last one of those ships to scour the waves for survivors was the HMS Cossack. The Cossack did not find any human survivors, but did manage to find one soggy cat floating on a piece of wood. They pulled him on board, and according to some sources, not knowing what the name of the cat was, they dubbed him Oskar. Other sources have the Germans bestowing that name upon the cat. Like with much of Unsinkable Sam's backstory, things aren't always particularly clear. Oskar proceeded to switch allegiances from Germany to England, which is honestly not that surprising for a cat. Cats are one of nature's best examples of, hey, I'm looking out for number one. He served aboard the Cossack for several months until she was struck by a torpedo fired from a German U-boat on October 23, 1941. The Cossack did not immediately sink. She went under 4 days later on October 27th, eventually succumbing to the damage caused by the torpedo strike. Just as before, Oskar was found floating on a derelict piece of wood and rescued. He was taken to Gibraltar, and upon hearing that a cat had survived 2 warships being destroyed, the British redubbed him Unsinkable Sam, the name he's been known by best since. Upon arriving in Gibraltar in early November of 1941, the HMS Ark Royal, the ship whose aircraft had started the process of sinking the Bismarck in the first place, adopted Unsinkable Sam. The Ark Royal had gained a reputation as a lucky ship, seeing as how she'd already survived several near misses in her career. With her luck and Unsinkable Sam on board, what could possibly go wrong? Within roughly a week of bringing Unsinkable Sam on board, Ark Royal wound up suffering the same fate as a Cossack, as she would be struck by a torpedo from a U boat on November 13th. Over the course of the next few hours, she'd roll over on her side, split in half, and sink. The order to abandon ship had actually been given relatively early on the Ark Royal, resulting in only one fatality during the sinking of the aircraft carrier. Amongst the wreckage, once again floating on a piece of wooden debris, was a certain feline who was described as, quote, angry, but quite unharmed. And that would be the end of Unsinkable Sam's life at sea, which makes sense if you consider that every ship he was known to have been on is now at the bottom of the ocean. There is no way you could convince me to get on a ship with that cat if he were still alive. Sam spent some time as a mouser at the home of the Governor of Gibraltar before reaching his final home at the Belfast Home for Sailors in Northern Ireland. Sam would pass away in 1955, 14 years after the Bismarck met its fate. It's unclear exactly how old he was, because I couldn't find any records of the cat prior to his naval service. I should point out here that the story of Sam, especially his recovery from the wreckage of the Bismarck, is of questionable veracity. There doesn't seem to be any direct evidence of the cat being recovered from the German battleship, and it's not like exaggeration or PR tall tales aren't a part of war, especially when it comes to animal mascots. The tale has lasted long enough at this point that it's fallen into the even if it's PR nonsense, it's funny, so we'll roll with it category. And that's the tale of Unsinkable Sam, the feline who spent 3 of his 9 lives surviving the sinking of what would be a few $1 billion worth of warships in modern money. If you like the story, or have suggestions for other war animal stories that I could cover, please feel free to like and subscribe, as well as comment on the video. And as always, thanks for watching.